Hi, my name is Vesa Juvonen and I work as a principal consultant in Microsoft Corporation. In this module, we'll cover the new SharePoint user interface enhancements and extensibility. This is an important topic since the UI is the primary surface end users interact with to get things done. It's also the prime real estate for extensibility since we all need our customizations to surface somewhere. We'll cover the following key topics, which will cover the key enhancements and improvements for user experience. We'll start by introduction to the new user interface experience, since there's a lot of improvements to make the user interface more consistent despite the functionalities we are using. In the following section, we'll concentrate on the server-side ribbon. We'll cover how the ribbon has been implemented and how it can be customized or utilized in our own customizations. After that, we'll cover the new possibilities to show relevant messages for end users using status bar and notifications. One of the key improvements in sense of the so-called fluent user interface is the new dialog framework. We'll concentrate on how it's also implemented and how we could utilize also that one efficiently in our customizations. There has been also changes in the page handling and master page support for SharePoint 2010. These changes and possibilities are covered in the following section. And as a final topic, we'll concentrate on the changes concerning themes. So let's start by going through the details of the new user interface. In SharePoint 2007, there's many different surfaces to interact with. These surfaces each have unique aspects and ways to interact. For instance, context menus, site actions and list actions might all contain items that operate on the list. It's not entirely clear what commands is available in each place and so on. And also, is the command available outside of the direct list view when the list is placed as a web part on a page. In 2007, when a user starts interacting with different surfaces, many of the commands will cause entire page to be reloaded or cause navigation to occur. Reloads and navigations are prime cause for end users losing focus and getting lost in their production. User productivity will decrease when they have a complex user interface to deal with. Product should allow people to focus on what they intend to do and should prevent users from needing to modify their normal working routines to work around product complexities. An important aspect of the SharePoint is its capability to create rich interactive dashboard pages using web parts. However, for authoring of these web parts, it's hard to show rich user interface for end users to interact with. The toolbar is rather ugly and single commands is rather limited. When you have more than one list view web part in a page, each of them might be rendered differently, depending on your settings. This adds clutter on the page and does not allow the same level of interaction when viewing each list separately. When people wanted to have rather simple page containing some formatted text and some information from list or two, they need a library to store their page. Shared document was often used in Team site, but this library is named inappropriately. They need to create a web part page and add appropriate web parts. They need to interact with content editor web parts, which uses a separate tool pane for editing content, not that intuitive at all. Adding any rich content like images requires a separate image upload to some location first, and then difficult inclusion on a page where the web part or the image is shown. This editing experience was not that good and needed to be enhanced. In SharePoint 2010, the user interface provides consistent experience for formatting content and how to add rich elements on the page, for example images. We don't have to add any web parts on a page if we don't like, to be able to have rich content available. All available actions for users are located in a single location, and if there's any need of this more complex configurations, we can utilize dialogues which don't redirect users to alternative locations. Also, the fact that web parts can provide functionalities to Ribbon will result fluent user experience, even though you would be adding new items to a list on the site. In this section, we'll concentrate on a ribbon and how it's implemented in SharePoint. We'll also cover how you can utilize the ribbon within our customizations to provide similar consistent user experience as for out-of-the-box functionalities. New Server Ribbon provides consistency with the client ribbon introduced already in the previous Office client versions. Ribbon is context-aware and can only show the relevant actions for shown content. It also supports, for example, dynamic resizing based on a screen resolution in a similar way as resize is supported by client-side Ribbon. Ribbon is also familiar, so end users can easily adapt to the tasks and functionalities available. Technically, Ribbon is implemented using XML-based configuration and JavaScript. There's a rich JavaScript interface for developers to use for further enhance or change the behaviors available. Ribbon is designed in a way that it's, especially when we use out-of-the-box master pages, always rendered on the top of the page, and it doesn't scroll out of the view. This way the end users can always locate the available functionalities easily from one consistent location. Ribbon provides contextual tab model, which means that it only shows relevant actions for the users depending on the context. Good example is, for example, the imaging editing option, which are shown in its own tab, and only when user selects the image to be modified. A lot of the out-of-the-box functionalities in a Ribbon provide command review functionality. Basically, users can see what would happen if the command is executed before it's applied. Good example of this is the font size preview. Ribbon is dynamically scaled based on available screen resolution. So if buttons are not rendered using a large image properly, they are automatically scaled to smaller images. Ribbon also provides capability to have so-called super tooltips. You can define these also for custom buttons added to the page. This means that you're able to provide proper description of the functionality with adding a tooltip images and so on. Ribbon supports not just buttons, but also other controls to be used in rendering. There's quite a few different types of controls available, which you can use to provide functionalities for end users. All supported controls are listed on the left side of the screen. And as you can see, there's a lot of different possibilities. Only control which we don't have out of the box is the gallery control compared to the client-side Ribbon, but you can mock up this using the existing controls if required. Ribbon XML defines the UI, and the actual behavior is dependent on the JavaScript. A lot of the out-of-the-box functionalities utilizes heavily JavaScript client object model to provide different functionalities available. Ribbon is either server or client rendered. All JavaScript loaded for the Ribbon is loaded on demand to optimize the initial loading time of the page. There's also no tables used in Ribbon rendering. It uses CSS layouts and styling to provide the UI. Out-of-the-box buttons have been optimized in that sense that they use clustered images, so that the overall amount of round trips and requests from browser to server side is optimized. Basically, this means that instead of loading individual images one by one, we are loading clustered images, which are single images containing the graphics for multiple buttons, and then CSS is used to only show certain areas of the particular image. This will enhance the performance of the or decrease the network load. Let's move to ribbon extensibility. Ribbon is fully extensible, which means that you can remove or replace any of the out-of-the-box controls. You can also add new controls to the ribbon based on your requirements. Potentially, you could even replace the ribbon entirely, but we think that it's actually providing some value, so hopefully you're not taking this route. Ribbon also provides backward compatibility for the custom actions in 2007. If you had custom actions in toolbars which are not available anymore, these would be now available in the Custom Commands tab. Note though that since Ribbon is fully client-side code, those custom commands which used server-side code are not supported in SharePoint 2010. If you use server-side code in your custom actions with previous versions, you'll need to refactor the code to achieve the same functionality in 2010. So how do we actually add the new controls to the ribbon? There's a ribbon XML which basically defines the key elements of the ribbon. Easiest way to add new controls to the ribbon is to use the declarative approach and define the new controls using new ribbon-related custom actions. More complex behavior might require a JavaScript page component to be created to achieve the desired functionality. So what does it actually mean in practice? Let's have a more detailed look on this in the following slide. Out-of-the-box ribbon controls are defined in Command UI XML. This file is located in a template global XML folder at the 14 root folder. This file contains the main definitions for the out-of-the-box ribbon. We are using custom actions to add new controls to the ribbon itself. This is defined in some feature element XML file using specific ribbon-dependent elements. Key attributes are location and scope. Location defines where the control will be placed, and the scope attributes can be obviously used to define the scope of the definition. When the page is rendered, controls defined in a Command UI definition section are merged to Command UI, and ribbon is generated. If you have a Command UI handlers for your controls itself, these are added to the page separately to handle the functionalities of the control. If you don't define the Command UI handlers, you're responsible of adding the JavaScript page component on a page and registering that correctly. Basically, it's much more easier to use the Command UI handlers directly from a custom action if possible. If you don't have extensive amount of JavaScript, you might want to leverage the alternative options. This is an example of custom action registration. In this case, we are registering our button to be shown on a document libraries. More detailed, the button will be shown in a new group of the document library ribbon. Notice that we are also defining the unique identifier for actual control to be placed on a page. In this case, the identifier is ribbon.documents.new.demo button, which follows up the naming convention to be followed. So when you are naming your controls or creating the identifier for your controls, it's recommended to use the same naming conventions as for most of the out-of-the-box controls, meaning basically the naming convention ribbon.id of the tab, .group of the .id of the group, the actual button ID or the control ID. Sequence attribute defined in a button defines the control location within the group. Command attribute defines the identifier of the command action to be performed when a button is clicked. You want to ensure that it's unique string for your command. This defines the Command UI handler which should be used. Good naming convention is to use the ID of the controls and extend that with the unique identifier. In this case, we have defined the identifier to be documents underscore new underscore demo underscore action. The template alias defines the template to be used. Every group has the templates which they use for layouting their controls. Most of the out-of-the-box groups uses flexible 2 template, which have 2 sections, O1 and O2, which stands for overflow 1 and overflow 2. This means that you can add as many buttons or controls as you want, and the template will just be expanding. If you get the template alias wrong, groups are unable to decide where do you want to put your controls, which causes the control not to be rendered. The command UI handler defines the actual action to be performed when user clicks the button. If you add an URL here, user will be redirected to a particular address. You can also write JavaScript like in this example, where we just show the JavaScript alert whenever user clicks particular button. Out-of-the-box button locations are listed in a command UI XML file, as mentioned in the previous slide. When you're adding your own controls or buttons to existing groups, you define the location based on this file. In case the location, in that case, the location would be something like ribbon.tab.group-to-use.controls._children. You want to, however, verify the location identifiers from the command UI XML to ensure the exact identifiers to be used. Within the example, we are adding a custom convert documents button to a document libraries. So in this case, the location would be ribbon.documents.manage.controls._children. Basically meaning that the button would be visible in the document libraries in a managed group, and it will be placed there. The order within the group is based on the sequence attribute defined for the control itself. The concept of multi-level targeting is that the ribbon shows content for multiple levels in SharePoint. So if you are within the site, so site context applies. You might be on a page, so the page content applies too. On this page, you might have a selected list web. On the page, you might have a selected list web part, which also adds the context of what buttons and controls to be shown in ribbon. So there's no need actually go to the list to work with the list. You can just do it by do that from anywhere you see the list data. Out-of-the-box list handling is a really good example of providing these buttons to ribbon to manipulate the data of the list without losing the user's context in the user interface. Let's have a demo concerning how do we actually add the button to the ribbon and what are the tasks and elements we need to be aware of.
Excellent. In this demo we'll see how do we actually add the ribbon buttons to SharePoint ribbon using XML, which is now available from the feature framework as well. The key point which we covered already in the slide was the fact that every single ribbon element has their unique ID, and we need to define the location where we actually set our functionalities. In this case we want to add a few new buttons to the pages ribbon, which is available for these wiki pages within the team site. The unique IDs are stored in the command UI XML file, which can be found underneath the 14 root template global XML. And in here we can actually see the different IDs which are available. So for example, wiki page tab, we can see that the wiki page tab has the following settings, and there is following groups and following controls and so on. So we use these identifiers to define to which control set, for example, we want our button to be added. So if we would like to add, for example, a custom button to edit and checkout control group, that would be the ID or the location would be this one. So let's actually have a look on the Visual Studio side. In this case, we have a Visual Studio project which actually has two different ribbon customizations. Other one is relatively simple, where we only add one button to a existing ribbon group. Let's a little bit resize the Solution Explorer so we're actually able to see what are we adding here. And the key point with the IDs is the location. So when we define that the ribbon Wikipage share control on children will be the location, we will be adding our custom button underneath this share group. And of course, obviously, when we add a button to the ribbon, we also need to name or give an identifier for that button to make it truly work. In this case, we are using the same naming convention as the out-of-the-box ones, and then we have the demo button. The key point which we also are setting in here for the button is the command. So in this case we use command demo hello world again, and this has to be unique, otherwise there will be multiple buttons hitting the same custom command UE handler. So we can define this actually to be based on the ID as well. In this case it's a demo hello world again, and that will reflect to this command UE handler, and on that handler we have the actual JavaScript which will be called when we click the button. Relatively simple and straightforward. The other example which we have in this demo is how to add a group to ribbon, which is a little bit more higher level control. So the buttons, if we have a look on this one, it was supposed to go to share and demo button. Let's have a look on where does it actually go. So we have the share and track functionality, so that button will be in here. The share and track functionality itself is a group, like the manage in here is a group. And we can also define these custom groups for our custom buttons if we want. And that it's a little bit more complicated XML, but it follows up the same rules. So if we do add a group, we need to define first the UI definition, and the key point here is that we are adding group to Wikipage groups, and we have the unique identifier for the group, and within the group we have controls, and we have a single button at this demo. And this is also a relatively simple button which will do a demo hello world, and there's a hello world JavaScript handler for that particular button as well. But it will be rendered in its own group, and the group itself will have its own text which will be available, which is a Ignite custom group. Let's deploy our customization to the SharePoint, and since we are modifying only SharePoint ribbon, we can actually deploy our customization as a sandbox solution. So they will be available quite quickly, and we don't have to recycle the IIS, and the deployment is really fast and straightforward. As we can see, the deployment has succeeded already, so let's move back to our team site, and let's refresh the page so that the ribbon settings are refreshed as part of the rendering. So now the command UI, the definition in the command UI XML and our definitions in the feature framework will be merged, and when we go to the page tab we can see two different buttons available. We have the simple button within the share group, and we have our own Ignite custom group where we also have a one button existing at the moment. We could easily have multiple additional buttons here as well, or other controls. So now when we click this button, our JavaScript will be executed, and we're able to do whatever is requested based on the business requirements. And we can easily combine, for example, JavaScript client object model to these buttons to actually start modifying the site structure directly when these buttons are clicked. Relatively simple, relatively straightforward, as long as we get the IDs correctly and we know the location where we actually are putting these buttons to. And that sums up our demo.
Let's continue with the details concerning status bar and notifications, and how we can actually show additional messages for the end users without interrupting their actions they're performing within the page. The status bar and notification area are prime places to show messages to end users. Both of these have a little bit different purpose. General idea is to provide relevant content for the end users in the context without distracting them. Status bar should be placed to display persistent. Status bar should be used to display persistent information such as page status, page version, or some action to be performed. Notifications are used for transient or semi-transient messages. The status bar can be shown in a few fixed color that indicates a positive or negative status. The notification area is used for smaller messages. Of course, both items can be accessed through the code, so you can show your own messages using SharePoint infrastructure. Good examples of the notifications are the messages shown during the page life cycle, like saving the page and so on. As mentioned in a previous slide, status bar is aimed to be used for persistent information. Status bar is located just below the ribbon through the user interface. There are 4 different reset background colors available for the messages, which also indicate the importance of the message. If you have 2 messages shown at the same time with 2 different importance levels, higher priority messages will define the color to be used. For extensibility, there's JavaScript and server-side APIs. Using the JavaScript, we can add and remove the messages shown on the status bar area. We can also specify the message color to be used depending on our requirements. Server-side statuses can be set during the page rendering time using specific out-of-the-box server control placed on a page or on a web part. Message shown within the status bar is HTML, which means that we can include links and images if required. Good example of a status bar message is the health monitoring messages shown in the central administration application. If there's any critical issues detected on the SharePoint farm, an administrator opens up a central administration application, there are high priority red messages with a link to additional information shown on the front page of the application. This slide defines the APIs to manipulate the status bar using JavaScript. Using the JavaScript API, we can do all the necessary actions required for manipulating the information shown. We can quite easily add, update and remove status messages. We can also modify the status priority color, defining the color as a parameter for function call. Note that even though we have the remove all status function available, it's not a good practice to use it, since you might not be the only one adding the status messages to the page. Rather use the remove status with a specific identifier. In this example, we have 2 different functions which would be called, for example, from ribbon buttons. Show yellow message function is adding message using add status function. In this case, we add also some example HTML content on a status message to demonstrate the purposes and capabilities. Immediately after the message has been added, we are changing the background color from a default value to yellow. Other supported options would be red, blue, and green. Notice how to store the unique identifier to my message variable, so that we can use that identifier to further modify or remove the message. This is exactly the case which is demonstrated in the hide yellow message function. In this function we call the remove status function with a unique identifier as a parameter. This will remove the identified message from the status bar. As mentioned in the previous slides, we can also define status messages from the server-side code during the rendering time of the page. This can be achieved by using the Microsoft.WebControls.sp page status setter control, which will be responsible of updating the message to UI as part of the page rendering. Since the server-side control is only available on rendering time of the page, we obviously cannot use this control to remove the messages without postbacks. This control can be used to indicate some status information of the sites or guiding the end users to perform some tasks which have not been yet done. As also mentioned in the introduction slide, the notifications are transient or semi-transient information. By default, notifications are shown in the right side of the page immediately underneath the ribbon. When we are adding notification, it will be visible for the end users by default for 5 seconds. You can alternatively use so-called sticky message option, which would require that you would need to be responsible of removing the notification by yourself. For extensibility purposes, we have JavaScript API, which can be used to add and remove these messages from UI. Like the status bar messages, notification messages are also HTML, so you can include any links, images, or other HTML elements for your message as needed. With the notifications, we have 2 different API calls available. Add notifications for adding our notifications to the UI, and remove notifications, obviously, to remove them. If you have a specific notification, if you specify the notification to be sticky, like in the example given as a parameter, you'll need to remove the notification by yourself. This process is demonstrated on the example. We first add the notification with the sticky option enabled and store the status identifier. Since the status identifier has been stored, we can use that also to remove the message from the UI. Let's have a closer look on the status bar and notification messages and how they are shown and how we can utilize them within our customizations.
In this demo we'll concentrate on status bar and notes functionality, which we can obviously utilize from the ribbon or from any web port as well. In this case, for the clarity, to make this things simple, we have implemented this based on a custom web port, which is a visual web port, so we can more easily show the JavaScript which will be executed. But as we covered in the slides, the notifications and status bars can be used or started from the JavaScript as well. We have 4 different colors available for the status bar messages, and we can easily customize the messages to be added to the status bar. Let's first have a look on the client-side functionality and then see how this is actually implemented. Let's add here a custom message, which will be included to our messages which we add to the status bar. And if I now click the Show Red Client-Side Message, we will see the red message and the custom message, and with that one link which could actually point to anywhere we want. The color coding is based on priority of the messages which we are showing. So that means the following. So if I now hide the red message, and let's set the blue message here, which is a little bit different message. Well, it has the blue message and a custom message text as well. But now if there's an additional more important message to be shown, like the yellow or red message, the whole status bar will be recolored based on the highest priority of the messages. And as we covered in the slides, the priority is from blue, green, yellow to red. So now we have a blue message and a yellow message, so the yellow will be the color to be shown. On the yellow message we also had a GIF animation included just to demonstrate the fact that the messages are actually HTML. This means that if we now add a new message, which is a red message, we are able to see that every single message will be colored to red, since the red message is the highest priority message. And obviously if I hide these one by one, the framework will recolor the status bar based on the highest priority. So basically meaning that if I get rid of the red message, we'll go back to the yellow message, and hide the yellow message, we go back to the blue message. And we can also hide the actual blue message. The fourth color which we didn't see is the green one, and it has the same behavior as for any other colors as well. So we're basically able to use this JavaScript APIs to add these messages, modify them, or hide them, or recolor them. I'll show how it's done after demonstrating the other functionalities from here. We can also do or update the status bar messages directly using a server-side control. This would be usable, for example, if you have created a site and you want to request additional information, or you want to guide the end user to some alternative page to do additional configuration settings or whatever, or requesting information. So whenever we request a site, we're using the server-side message to generate the whatever we want to show within the status bar. So this comes from the server side, ignite server side message, and we will do a full postback as part of this. And this demonstrates the fact that we can define these status bar messages directly from the server side as well. We can also include the links, for example, the site settings and whatever is required for your functionality. Now if I request the page, since we are not checking the status again, the server-side message is gone. Obviously you can in your code check if the user has actually done the requested action and show the message again if required. Other thing which was really interesting concerning the messages is the notifications. And we have two types of notifications available. We have the non-sticky notifications, which we can add to inform the end users of our actions which have been performed. And these messages will be automatically hidden within 5 seconds of their existence. And these are kind of alert messages to indicate some action or behavior to be done, or confirm some action the end user has done without affecting the end user's user experience that much. The other option is to have sticky information, which is basically a notification which we are responsible of removing. So that notification won't be removed until we explicitly tell from the JavaScript that notification to go away. This could be, for example, useful if you want to show that let's say that you are creating numerous lists or creating some structures based using JavaScript client object model, and you want to indicate that the functionalities are still ongoing. And after every single thing has been executed, then you remove the sticky notification within your JavaScript client object model. Let's have a look how these actually are done in the code side. So let's move to Visual Studio and let's open up our visual web part, which is having all of the required JavaScript code. As you saw from the UI is relatively simple. We have only a few different links available and a few different controls or text boxes which you can actually use. And most of the functionalities we demonstrated are based on JavaScript and client-side functionalities, but there was also the possibility to utilize SP page status setter which is something which we can use as part of the rendering of our actual page to inform information. So basically meaning the following: we have the text box 2, and the button 1, and we have the SP page status setter. And from the actual code, we can see that we are creating a status to be shown based on the settings on the page and based on the information in the text box, and we're adding a link also to site settings page. And then we use the status setter add status method to actually get the status to be shown within the UI. And for this we can definitely say what kind of color we will be using when we actually render the message within the UI. So this was responsible of the following functionality. If we move back to the site and we tell here ignite message, click the server message, and we will get the server after server-side post back. We're getting some messages posted to the status bar. The other functionalities were client-side functionalities, so let's have a look on those and the implementation of those ones. We have the show message 0123, and we have the sticky notify and non-sticky notify functions. The show message functionality is based on the following implementation. So within the show message, we first see if we have our array of 4 items available. If it's not, we create it. This is used to store the message IDs, which we actually are showing within the UI. Then we get the txt message, which was one of the text boxes on the site, so we include that as part of our message. And if there is already existing ID or existing message with the same ID present, we are removing it. And then we check that based on a case, based on a number, we are setting the color either to blue, red, green, or yellow. But for actual adding the message in, we're using the SP UI status add status method or function, which will be available, and for that we can say the title and the actual message and how it will be behaving. The key point here is that we are taking the ID of the message shown and storing that to our array, so whenever we click hide, we are able to use that information to hide our message using the remove status function. Based on the ID, we are hiding the messages from the UI. Let's refresh from the user interface side, basically meaning the following. If I request the page one more time, we can add green message, we can add yellow message, we can get rid of the green message, we can get rid of the yellow message, we can add green, we can add blue, get rid of the green message, and get rid of the blue message. So we're storing all the time the IDs to be able to hide them based on our functionality and based on the ID which we used for showing the message in the UI. The other part of the demo was concerning the sticky notifications and non-sticky notification, generally notifications. If we have a look on those APIs, we have the non-sticky notify, which basically means that we're adding using the SPUI notify add notification, but the key point here is that the sticky indication is false, so that the message will be shown within 5 seconds in the UI. If we set the message, the sticky property to true, we actually are responsible of removing that notification from the UI as part of our code. As part of this demo, we have a separate function which we can call, and for that we are giving the sticky status ID, which will get rid of that particular status identifier or the status message which is available from the UI. And just to demonstrate, we have the non-sticky notifications, we have the sticky one, and based on the timing, the non-sticky notifications will be automatically cleared from the UI, since they will be there 5 seconds. But for the sticky notification, we need to request it to be removed as part of our JavaScript code. I think we went through relatively well the status bar and notification area utilization.
In this section, we'll concentrate on the dialog framework. We'll cover the improvements the dialog framework is providing us in sense of the user experience and how we can utilize the dialog framework also from our customizations. In previous SharePoint versions, we have a lot of different actions and commands which resulted always postbacks. This caused unnecessary flickering of the sites and pages, and the user were quite often transitioned to a new location. Page transitions tend to pull people away from the context they are or were, which was really confusing. Also, since page transition caused page reloading, it just didn't feel as fast as it was. In the SharePoint 2010, we keep the user in context of the page. We open up a dialog and keep the user in context so that when requested action has been performed, user returns back to the original page. This way there's no unnecessary page transitions and the user stays within the same context all the time. There's also no unnecessary postbacks of the page since the whole ribbon experience is implemented using JavaScript and Ajax in a way that we don't need to do full page postbacks. As mentioned or covered already in a previous page, the key objective of a dialog framework is the design was to reduce the page transitions and keep the user in context. The users don't get lost and know exactly where they are despite the functionality they are performing. Basically, the contents of the dialog is loaded in an iframe inside of a floating div, which is shown for the end users in like a modal dialog and background is grayed out. This way the user have to perform action shown in the dialog before they can move forward within the page. Dialogs themselves are trackable within the browser window, so if required, end users can track the dialog to alternative location on the screen to peek the opener page located underneath the dialog. Dialogs can also be maximized the size of the browser window, so user experience imitates in some level Windows Forms clients. Content to be shown in the dialog can be specified as an URL to be shown or with DOM elements. If you use the DOM element option, you should keep in mind that when we close the dialog, we are deleting the DOM element given to API. If you use the DOM element to provide the information, you might want to take a copy of it before calling these APIs, so that the original DOM element doesn't disappear. There's few additional parameters which we can define for the dialog to be opened, concerning example the size and other behavioral functionalities. If you have not defined the width or the height of the dialog to be shown, auto sizing is applied. This means that the SharePoint will try to automatically determine the size of the dialog based on its content. One of the nice functionalities of the dialog framework is also the fact that we can utilize the same page for the SharePoint content and for the dialog forms. Idea is that you can use the same page in numerous places more easily. You can achieve this by markupping the Chrome not to be shown within the dialog mode using a specific CSS class. So when page is shown within the dialog, that CSS class will hide whatever has been marked to be hidden. This way only the relevant HTML is shown within the dialog. If you use the default V4 muster, which is the default master within the SharePoint, it already contains the CSS class in proper locations so that all irrelevant HTML, like the navigation elements, will be hidden automatically if you open up any page using this particular master page. And this is also a good practice if you write your own custom master pages to know this. This is an example code for starting the dialog from your page. In the open dialog function, we define the dialog options and open up the dialog by calling show modal dialog function, to which we pass the options to. In this example, we do not assign width or height for the dialog, so auto-sizing will be applied automatically for both of them. Notice also how we create the return value delegate so that when we close our dialog, proper function is called. Other function is the close callback. Other function in this case is the close callback, and that's called when we close the dialog. Notice the two parameters, result and a target of the function. Result will contain the dialog result value, which can be either OK or cancel. Well, actually there's a third parameter called invalid, which is not handled in this case, but you might want to write some code for that as well. The target parameter can be used to return additional information from the dialog to the opener window. In this case, we write different notification messages depending on the return code, and also include the additional information to the notification. Obviously, you could start any other routines you like as well within your code, but this example simplified the demonstration of the different functionalities. On the dialog page size, we can transfer the return values and additional information back to the opener using specific JavaScript APIs available. This is an example from the dialog opened page, which is in a dialog. In this example, we have two functions, which are called depending on user actions. On cancel function, we set the return value to be cancel and return an additional message, which is additional message cancel clicked return value back to the opener. Similar on the OK handler, we are returning the OK and additional parameters back to the opener of the dialog. This way we can make a full cycle of opening the dialog and returning information back to the opener depending on the user's action. This example demonstrates the code to be used when we have some server-side code to be executed on the dialog page. In this case, we want to execute first our server-side code and then close up the dialog, including proper return values for the opener. After executing our code behind code of the dialog, we can use the HTTP response object to instruct the browser for proper actions. In this case, we write the necessary JavaScript to browser to include the return values. This is done by calling the common dialog close with the parameter 1 and additional information. 1 in this case means the return value OK, and if we would like to return cancel, that would be 0. Let's have a more detailed look on the capabilities of the dialog framework and how the example code defined in the previous slide actually works within the browser. We cover both of the cases demonstrated on the previous slides. For client-side execution and server-side response. We'll also have a look on how we can use the same page for a standard page and within the dialog, and how the Chrome is hidden when the page is open in a dialog when we use the proper CSS class.
In this demo, we'll concentrate on the dialog framework functionalities, which are available for our customization as well. So let's start by using the dialog framework to do something relatively simple and just to show the actual flow of the dialog framework. So what we have done is that we've deployed a new custom ribbon button, which is now on the final button within the ribbon, which is a custom button added using the feature framework. On the button event handler, which I show shortly, we've associated or will start the feature framework JavaScript, and will open up our custom dialog page, which will provide information concerning this particular site. So if we click this button, we are opening up our custom dialog, and it's showing the current web title to be as intranet. And of course, depending on our action, do we click cancel or OK, we are returning the values back to the actual caller. So if we click cancel, we can differentiate obviously that the cancel has been clicked, and if we click the OK, we can also obviously know that one as well. If we have a look on the actual implementation of this functionality, this is relatively simple feature-based approach where we add a new custom group. First of all, to our ribbon, and for the ribbon location, we have said that this group will be placed in the ribbon wiki page tab and groups. And for the actual implementation, we have added a one button, and then there's the start custom dialog command. And for that particular command, the command UI handler is located within the ribbon XML as well. And from here, we can see that we're calling first creating the initial dialog options, defining the URL to be actually shown, the width and the height, and the dialog return value callback. So this basically means that when we define this, our additional function will be called whenever we close up the dialog. And then we start up the actual dialog by defining SPUI modal dialog.show modal dialog, and we keep the options as a parameter. Now that we have opened up the actual page, in this case we're opening up a page which is a custom ASPX page, where we have a little bit formatting of the content to show the title of the farm. There's a custom image on the page, and there's the two buttons which are the cancel and OK buttons. And when we click the cancel or OK, depending on which one we click, we either return the dialog result cancel value or the dialog result OK value. And we also bypass some additional information back to the caller. So the second parameter for the command dialog modal dialog close is the return value for the actual caller. So we're bypassing information from this dialog to the actual page, which was used to start up the dialog. And if we have a look on from the UI one more time, so if we open up the dialog, we're able to see our page. We have the image, we have the cancel and OK, and if we click OK, we'll get a message back that you've clicked OK, and we are able to start behaving based on the return value. And the additional thing which I wanted to mention concerning the dialog itself, the page which we are showing in here is a standard application page which is deployed underneath the underscore layouts folder. And it was deployed to the location based on the Visual Studio project name. And the key point in here is that when we are viewing or opening up these pages using the dialog mode, there will be additional parameter passed in for the pages, which is the isDialog equals 1. And as an end result of this query parameter, SharePoint will automatically hide any additional information, for example, concerning the Chrome, for example, the navigation and ribbon. So if we actually access the same page using direct URL, we can see that the page actually has the ribbon, and it has the navigation, it has the basic elements of the SharePoint. But since these elements have been marked using specific CSS class, they will be hidden when the page is actually rendered in a dialog mode. And the same page one more time from the dialog mode. And let's press cancel. The other demo which I wanted to show is concerning how do we actually return from the dialog if we need to execute code within the dialog page itself. So if there's something, for example, numerous controls within the page, when the values and we start behaving or implementing or executing code from the code behind. Everything which we saw in this demo was based on the client side functionalities, so we are returning the values from the client side and so on. But to demonstrate this server-side return value setting, we have implemented a custom functionality to convert existing docx files to XPS or PDF files. So in the shared documents library, which is a document library obviously, we have associated new custom buttons to ribbon, which is the Convert Documents button. And the functionality idea is that I can select which of the documents will be converted to PDF format. So let's select these two documents and click the Convert Documents. And we are showing our dialog. And the dialog, from the dialog we're able to see which documents were selected. And do we want to actually convert the docx files to PDF or XPS. Let's choose the PDF. Click OK, and we have our return values coming up. On the same time, what actually happened was that on the code behind of that dialog itself, we generated a conversion jobs for the word automation service application. And since the word automation service application is based on timer job based approach, I want to execute this timer job now immediately, so we're actually getting the documents converted immediately to our site. So if I now go back to the shared documents, we can see that we have generated two new versions of the same document, which are now visible in here. So how was this actually implemented? Let's have a look on the actual project side, on the Visual Studio project side. So first of all, we needed to have a one ribbon button, which is added to the ribbon documents ribbon within the managed group. And within the ribbon itself, we have the image, we have the description, and so on. But the key code is obviously on the JavaScript side, so within the command UI handler, where we have the actual collection of the selected items. And then we are bypassing those selected items to the conversion options ASPX page, which is our custom dialog, which we show when the button is actually visible. One thing concerning the kind of a button behavior and the JavaScript behavior is the fact that we're also able to set this enable script attribute for the actual button. And this basically means that we're able to say dependencies on when the button is actually enabled. In this case, we have the word conversion at least one checked, and we are checking that at least one of the documents have been checked before we start the conversion job, or before we can actually even open up the dialog. Let's have a look on this side first, and let's move on. After that, I will delete these two converted documents now. So basically we have the convert documents button in here, to the dependent JavaScript call, which is there to ensure that we're not opening up the dialog for nothing. We have associated the code that only when at least one ID or one document has been selected, the button will be enabled. So let's click the button and we open up our custom dialog. Let's have a look on the dialog implementation itself. So the custom dialog has been deployed as an application page or to _layouts folder, and within here we are selecting rendering obviously the UI, which uses kind of a SharePoint style of UI, and we also have the actual button to start the conversion as an actual ASP.NET control, which would basically mean that there will be a code behind executed whenever this button will be clicked. From the code behind of the page, there's a few different things which we are doing. We have the onClick event, but before we do that, we actually request from the query strings which kind of items and from which list we are getting in, and based on that information we are also showing that which of the files have been selected for conversion. What does it actually mean? It means the following. Let's open up the actual page one more time. So we're actually seeing the list of documents which will be converted. And then the actual word automation part. So we have the actual button, click OK button here. What are we doing? We are accessing the word automation services proxy and requesting instance on that. Depending on the selected target document types, we are defining our output format. And for the items which have been selected and the items which we are manipulating, we are adding them to the actual word automation conversion job object. And the final thing before we actually close up the dialog itself, we start the conversion, which will basically indicate for the word automation services that now we actually have a new job and it will be available, and whenever the word automation timer job will be executed, those documents will be converted as well. And how do we actually close up the dialog from the code behind? We are using the page response, and on the page response we will are writing the necessary JavaScript which will close up the dialog. And in this case it's the common dialog close. Number one means that we are returning OK value back to the caller, and then we are also adding additional parameters in, which is basically the number of the items to be converted, which we can then show in the notification area of the calling page. Let's go back to the page and move forward with our conversion. So we can select which type will be converted. The type will be PDF. Let's click OK. And we're able to see, based on our return value from the code behind, that one document will be converted. Please wait a while and refresh. This is to the time job based approach. And now, when the time chart have been executed, it will generate the actual PDF file for this particular document. This is kind of a simple example of providing conversion functionalities to existing documents. And you can definitely use the word automation to alternative approaches as well. We went through two different kind of ways to handle the documents. We went through the code behind approach, and we also took a look on the more simplified approach where we were only manipulating or handling the functionality in the client side based on a cancel and an OK button. Both options are totally valid and totally usable, definitely within your customizations as well.
In this section, we'll have a look on the key changes on the page model. In previous versions, we usually called pages for only content created for WCM pages. We could create a new web part pages also for more simplified sites, but available functionalities were completely different compared to the pages in publishing sites. In 2010, we could say that the sites are actually always collection of pages, meaning that we should use the pages as the primary concept of modeling the SharePoint instead of using lists. Sites should be think of as a collection pages, not as just as a collection of lists. We have a flexibility of using different kind of layouts and models also for the pages, which are not restricted to the web zones as they were in 2007. Each theme site, for example, has a wiki library, which is also the location of the welcome page of the site. Wikis have the rich interaction model, and they allow a site to be easily stitched together using groups of pages and wiki linking. We can really easily create new pages just by clicking the new page on the site action and by defining the name of the page. After that, we can modify the page any way we like. One of the key improvements also in this area is the fact that we can add content and structures without adding web parts on a page. On the other hand, we can also use the web parts within these pages to provide more complex functionalities. This full flexibility is one of the new key capabilities of the SharePoint 2010. Like mentioned in the previous sections when we covered the ribbon, we also have a consistency of editing experience throughout the SharePoint 2010. Editing the pages is as similar as editing the content within the Word. We can add new images by single button click and a single dialog. Same consistency is now available also for SharePoint editing. You can easily insert rich content, not only images, but also tables and web parts, including lists of the pages. Also, the improvements of the site structures are important. Each theme site has now site asset library, which can be easily used as the default location for your images and other files used on the site. This enables us a more easier way to upload images and use them within the pages. Previously, users had to upload the image to the site first, add a web part to the page, and then modify the web part to show the actual image. These additional steps are not required anymore. SharePoint 2010 provides also other general improvements for editing experience. We can easily move between edit and read-only modes, improving the productivity of the users. For actual editing, there's the undo stack available, so if you accidentally do something which should be cancelled, you can easily accomplish this. Also, the fact that since content is stored as a pages in its own library and versioning is enabled by default, we can restore even older versions of the submitted content as well. SharePoint 2010 ships with numerous master pages which can be used depending on the functionality. Let's go through the out-of-the-box master pages one by one. The V4 master is the default master page for SharePoint 2010. It's used, for example, for theme sites and by default also for the application pages like site settings and so on. Minimal master page is used to provide application experience, like in search or in Office web applications. This master page can be used if you don't need site navigation or ribbon. Note that this master page does not work, for example, for theme sites since the limited controls it contains. Simple master is used for informative and simple pages like error pages or access denied pages. Master page used for these kind of pages cannot be customized or changed, but you can completely change the informative page used. This means that if you, for example, want to have a custom error page, you can design any kind of page and configure it to be shown in place of the out-of-the-box error page. Default master is providing the backwards compatibility for 2007 user experience. SharePoint 2010 sites can be configured to provide full legacy user experience if required. This is a common case when you have upgraded your SharePoint site, but the customized branded master page has not been yet upgraded to provide the enhanced UI functionalities like the ribbon. The final master page out of the box is the night and day master page, which is used by default within the publishing sites. By default, application pages in SharePoint 2010 will use the V4 master page, but it's but this is configurable using the system master page setting. Application pages will use the same master page page as defined, for example, for list views. This functionality is available also for default, not also for default, but also for custom application pages, which you might have developed. If you need to develop a custom master page, same practices as we had in 2007 are still valid. There are a few new placeholders which will need to be included to our new custom master page, but other than that, the development haven't been changed that much. Probably the biggest individual change compared to 2007 is the ribbon, which will replace, for example, the page editing toolbar and other legacy controls, providing functionalities which are now available from ribbon. An important feature when it comes to languages in SharePoint is the new support for multilingual sites. Formerly, each site was provisioned using a single specific language which couldn't be changed. This language determined content of the large number of UI elements, such as labels. SharePoint 2010 allows you to associate more than one language with the sites so that the end users can browse the site within their language they want. There are obviously limitations on this ability, such as list data, which is actual content, not labels. Default language is set on the provisioning time. Alternate languages are enabled by the site administrator. The display language that the site is viewed is then chosen by the end user. So they can choose any languages which have been enabled for the particular site. Obviously, the chosen language will only affect on the labels and the static content of the site. It doesn't translate the actual content which you have entered within the site, which you possibly have entered or edited within the site. SharePoint makes also use of the XHTML standard for displaying content. Earlier versions of the SharePoint either didn't indicate what to use or made use of the very much legacy HTML 4.01. This was not an issue for the users of Internet Explorer, but could cause issues for the users of alternative browser. Even this is not the case for SharePoint 2010, where the rendering is based on HTML. There are now 2 tiers of browsers supported. Each tier contains a specific set of browsers. Tier 1 consists mainly 32-bit Internet Explorer 7 and 8 or Firefox 3. Tier 2 contains 64-bit Internet Explorer, Firefox on non-Windows operating systems, and Safari. Notice that the Internet Explorer 6.0 is no longer a supported browser within the SharePoint 2010. In this demo, we'll see in practice what is a simple master page and what functionalities it will provide. We'll also cover the steps how to replace out-of-the-box informative pages like custom informative pages with the custom pages we've developed. Good example of the support is the capability to replace the out-of-the-box error page to some alternative page. We'll also cover the steps on how the application pages are branded.
So in this demo we'll concentrate on master page functionality and how the master pages have changed from 2007 to 2010. This is the default publishing site template, which is using alternative night and day master page, which is a little bit customized from the out-of-the-box. Well, this is also out of the box, but from the V4 master page. And one of the things I wanted to start with is the fact that now the application pages can be using any master page as well. At the moment on this particular site collection, we're using the same V4 master for application pages, meaning that all site content and site settings and so on are different compared to the actual front page rendering of the site. But now if we go to the front page, we have the night and day .master used. But now if we want, we can actually change the setting in a similar way as we could actually modify the settings in 2007. But now the key difference is the fact that also these system pages will apply this custom master page and will start using it. So let's update the night and day to master to be used as a system master page, and we can see the key difference from 2007. So now the site settings are by default automatically using this customized master page as well, and all of the functionalities which we have within the underneath the site settings are also using the custom master page. And this basically gives us possibility to bring and use complete branding and consistent look and feel throughout the site, without switching every now and then to, for example, default.master, which was the case in 2007, unless you actually implemented something custom code which updated the master page more dynamically. So all of the system setting pages, application pages, so all of the pages are applying the master page settings in 2010, and this is a really nice improvement if we compare to 2007. Let's also have a look on what is the simple master. So we do have the minimal master, that's for example, search and applications where we want to have more space. And then we have the minimal master or simple master, which basically is used for informative pages. And good example of the informative pages is for example pages when we log in, or if we delete up a site, or if there's an error happening. And in 2010 there's a really nice functionality that we can actually replace these pages as well, which is not possible by default in 2007. So just to demonstrate the replacement of the pages, I've implemented a custom feature, and within here I'll show how it has been done, and then we have a look on the simple master and how it's actually behaving. So we can now update the master pages for all of these informative pages as well, and we can also update the actual page content of these pages. So for access denied, we can say that use alternative path and confirmation, error, login, request access, sign out, and web deleted. And we can do this by updating or using the update mapped page functionality, where we are saying that, for example, in case of web deleted, we should be actually providing content from our custom page, which is part of this project which has been created. So what does it actually mean, and how does the simple master is actually shown? In this particular case, the simple master has been associated to web deleted page. So we have actually associated the simple master to be used within this page, which is also the default master to be used in web deleted pages, but we have explicitly said also that in custom page we're using this master. And since we have applied this customization to the site, we are using our alternative custom site deleted page. So if we go to the site settings, to the subsite, and delete the actual site and confirm our delete, we are actually able to see the simple master. The simple master, as said, is for informative information, and in this case we have a custom master with a custom text and one custom image, just to demonstrate the fact that we can actually update the functionality. And by clicking back to the site, we are in the front page of the site collection again. So that was simple master, and this is also the way we can actually change these informative pages which are used in the SharePoint 2010. And this is really nice functionality as well, that we are able to use our custom master pages throughout the site, providing us consistent look and feel.
In this section, we'll concentrate on the improvements on the theming engine. We already had themes in 2007 versions, but creating of the new themes and taking them to a use was a difficult task and required involvement of IT. That's not anymore the case in SharePoint 2010. Themes in SharePoint 2010 are based on the Themex file format. This is the exact same format which is also used within the Office client programs, which enables us a possibility to create theme, for example, in PowerPoint, and then utilize it within the SharePoint. Theming engine uses the Themex file to parse required CSS files on runtime, based on the markup defined within the file. This can be used to replace fonts and colors and for recoloring images. Engine generates new CSS files for each theme on runtime when the theme is applied. Theme gallery shown for the end users is populated from the files deployed to the theme gallery. There's no need to modify any additional XML files to get the theme available within the site. This also enables us an easy way to deploy new themes using a feature framework. So let's have a closer look on the actual process of generating the CSS files on fly and what happens in the background. As mentioned in the previous slides, available theme list is automatically generated based on the Themex files available within the theming gallery. When the user applies the theme to the site, the Themex file is merged with the existing CSS class, and the new files are generated. These are automatically also associated as the file to be used for the particular site from this point forward. So how does the theme markup actually work? SharePoint will replace any colors defined in the rule following the comment with the matching color that is defined in the Themex or web interface. It can even re-render graphics based on a pixel coordinates, tinting, or even re-rendering gradients for you. Markup for these is demonstrated on the slide examples. This is going to be a great time saver for the projects where requirements dictate multiple color variations on a central design, meaning that you can define a single master CSS and a single master, for example, master page, and then use the themes to provide alternative ways to change the UI colors and other stuff. This slide shows an example how to deploy Themex file to be available on the site using a feature framework. Notice that on the XML we define the target to be _catalogs and theme, which is the location of the theming gallery underneath the site. When the theme has been applied, we can apply the theme to the site using code. In this example, we are achieving this using a feature receiver, which is quite a common way to automate site provisioning changes. Let's have a closer look on the end user and development capabilities concerning themes. We'll demonstrate how to take an existing theme from Office client and manually deploy that to SharePoint. We'll also demonstrate how to automate the deployment completely using feature framework so that, for example, whenever you create a new theme site, the customized theme is applied automatically.
So in this demonstration, we'll concentrate on the new theme engine and theming functionality and what's new with the themes. In 2007 we already had themes available, but it was kind of painful to create new themes or painful to deploy new themes to the site. You needed to update the XML files and it wasn't that straightforward. Now in 2010 we can actually take existing themes from PowerPoints and save them as these theme files and start using those also within the SharePoint sites. There's also improvements concerning the object model, so we're able to deploy and activate themes more easily when we are using Feature Framework. So let's start by creating a custom theme from the PowerPoint. So in this case we have started using this really fancy green custom theme for our Ignite presentation. And as you can see, it's green and there's a few colors and everything else. We can definitely change the colors. We can set the color theme in PowerPoint as well. And when the settings have been done, or if you already have existing PowerPoint theme, you can save that theme from the PowerPoint itself to a ThemeX file. And in this case, let's save our file, our custom theme file, to the desktop of the particular computer, and let's name that as a Ignite sample. So the actual theme content is now stored within the desktop. And how do we actually take the theme in use in 2010? Well, on the site collection where we are, there's a new gallery available, which is a theme gallery. So from the site settings, underneath the galleries, we have the themes functionality or themes gallery, and we can actually upload new custom themes to be available on this particular site. So if we go to the actual Documents tab and choose Upload, we are able to choose from the computer which ThemeX file we actually upload, and we can then take that into use. And this is also the key point when we think about Feature Framework based deployment, that all of the themes are actually single files within the theme gallery. So let's start by selecting the Ignite sample, which we just uploaded or created actually in PowerPoint. Let's upload that to the theme gallery. Ignite sample is totally fine. Let's save that. And we can now see the Ignite example available within the gallery itself. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the Ignite sample will be available to be used as the theme within the site. So if we move the site theme functionality underneath the look and feels, we are able to see all of the different themes which are available, and there's really nice functionalities concerning these, since we're also able to do preview for the actual theme. So we're able to have a look on how the theme would actually look without applying the theme completely to the site. So this is now only visible for me, the preview of the theme. In our case, we uploaded the Ignite sample theme, and the colors are as we see. We can still specify some of the colors, we can specify the heading fonts and so on, and we can apply the theme which we took from the PowerPoint to the SharePoint site. And now the look and feel of the SharePoint site itself has changed based on the settings on the theme. A really simple, really efficient, really straightforward way of customizing the look and feel of the sites, based on a theme gallery, which is kind of a new functionality. Well, it is a new functionality which is available in 2010. So how do we actually do the same using Feature Framework? Since the theme gallery has its own URL, the objective is actually to deploy our ThemeX file. If we want to deploy it as part of our customizations, we need to deploy the file to the theme gallery. And the theme gallery is underneath the underscore catalog and theme URL. And what we want to do is to deploy our Ignite theme file to that particular gallery. And then if we truly want to automate the functionality, we also want to automate the applyment of the actual theme. So we do have one feature which is responsible of actually deploying the ThemeX file to that particular site collection. There's only one gallery in a one site collection. But then we do have a site scope feature which is not actually deploying anything. but the structure, the behavior of this feature is to automate and apply the particular theme to particular site whenever the feature is actually activated. And we can do this by using the new APIs which are available to manage the themes, and these are really straightforward based on only the URL, and we're able to set or remove the themes directly using just the object model. So let's deploy this to the site collection. It will be deployed as a sandbox solution since we are only touching or manipulating site level content or site collection level content. So the solution is now added, deployment has succeeded, and we did have two things which we wanted to do. We didn't have automated activation on, just in demonstration purposes. So one thing which we wanted to check is that do we actually get the theme already in here. Well, it's not here since the features haven't been activated. Let's go to the site collection features, underneath the site collection administration, and there's the site collection features, and in here we have a deploy theme feature 1. So by activating this, we actually provision the themex file to be available within the theme gallery. So going to site settings, going to themes, we can actually see that we have the Ignite themex also available. But if we truly want to automate by the theme applyment, we can also execute some API code as part of the feature receiver to truly activate the theme also automatically. And we can do this from the in this case, the code has been associated to a site-scoped feature, or a web-scoped feature to be precise, and the actual code will apply the theme automatically based on the theme name. So clicking Activate, the feature receiver will execute, and it will manipulate the themes and create the necessary files for themes on runtime, and associate the theme to be used on this particular site. And now if we go to the front page, we can see that we have a completely different UI based on the theme settings which were in the themex file. Really nice functionality, really much easier than it was in 2007 for both deployment and UI based configurations.
So, in this module we started with an introduction of the new user interface. Then we covered the details of the ribbon utilization. We also got familiar of the new UI capabilities concerning status bar, notifications and dialog framework. There has been also changes on the site structure model since we now utilize pages everywhere. In that section we also had a quick look on the different master pages and their purpose in SharePoint 2010. As the final topic, we covered the improvements of the theming engine, which provides flexible platform for simple branding modifications, as we also saw in a demo. Thanks for your time, and hopefully the presentation was useful.